While the genre was pretty well established before the console came out, you could argue that the SNES was when RPGs really began to set creative standards that some RPGs of today just struggle to match. From heavy-handed Queen references to at least a handful of dragons to the greatest video game frog ever. I'm Jimmy for Cultured Vultures, and these are the best SNES RPGs of all time, limiting things to just one entry per franchise. Number 10. Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals. As Lufia 2 is a prequel to Lufia and the Fortress of Doom, following the story of an ancestor of the previous game's protagonist, you don't need 30 hours of experience to immediately click with this one. In fact, you may want to start here. A lot of people in Europe actually did. Unfortunately though, Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals tends to fall under the radar a bit compared to the more well-known RPGs for the console, maybe similarly to how Alundra on PS1 does in the fact that it has quite a few puzzles, and sometimes that's just not for everyone. I know I have to be in a particular mood to feel stupid, you know? Well, more stupid than usual. If you haven't played Lufia 2 before though, you're in for one of the most underrated gems on the Super Nintendo. Besides offering a pretty good story that shows the origins of the previous game's antagonists, Lufia 2 has an excellent monster summon system. A range of creatures can be summoned to help you in battle, adding a nice touch of depth to a deep, involving quest that revolves around you discovering the origins of a war against the gods, one elaborate dungeon at a time. You won't have to worry about random battles though, so you can instead focus on the only random chance mechanic that truly matters: high-octane slot machine action, oh yeah. With its banger soundtrack and unique action-adventure twists to the RPG formula, Lufia 2 succeeds in immersing you in its world pretty well, even if it got nowhere near succeeding commercially, which explains these wild, kinda stinky prices. Rise the prices, am I right? Guess you gotta check in on that late Emu, Emu is usually late. Emu late, yeah. Number 9. Terranigma. One of the most eye-catching action RPGs ever made for the SNES, we're always gonna champion Terranigma around these parts, even if its creator is never going to be around to properly port it, apparently. In it, you play as the young boy Ark, who soon finds himself caught in the middle of a cosmic war, historically one of the least chill kinds of wars. There's a rich, meaty story for RPG fans to enjoy here, with Ark embarking on a quest to save his underground village while also restoring life itself to the surface world in the aftermath of a vicious calamity. Terranigma is one of those great action RPGs that benefit from being easy to pick up and also highly intuitive. Ark uses a spear to do the most physical damage, but the game also has a series of rings you can collect to imbue him with magical spells. You'll sometimes need to make dramatic adjustments to defeat the fantastically designed, very challenging bosses throughout the game. A late release for the SNES, Terranigma, the third and final game in the Gaia trilogy, is a graphically gorgeous adventure with an evocative, memorable soundtrack on top of the kind of eco-conscious storyline that a certain spiky boy would bring into the mainstream just 2 years later. And this game really deserves to be brought out again. Question time. What was the second game in the trilogy called? Leave your comment down below and you could win a free Steam key for free. Number 8. Ogre Battle: The March of the Black Queen. A real-time tactical RPG with far more depth than some might suspect the SNES was even capable of, The March of the Black Queen is all about revolution. Hold the dance. After starting your character from pretty much a blank canvas, you're determined to bring down the Zetagenean Empire, and you're going to need the most powerful army in the land to be successful. You can even affect your reputation with a nation based on the different decisions you make, though do beware, this is very much a slow cooker of a game. Ogre Battle is set in a world in which humans live side by side with monsters like werewolves, vampires, and of course the titular ogres. It's like that Will Smith movie Bright. That's the second Will Smith Bright reference I've done in like 3 months. Send me the check whenever you're ready, Will Smith. A worthwhile army is going to cover a variety of different creatures with different abilities, as well as human soldiers of various ranks and classes. There's a lot of potential to build the mystery men lineup of your dreams here, so micromanagers will definitely find something to latch onto. But there's also a lot of work involved in carefully managing resources in sprawling battles with the Empire, especially if there's a particular ending you're gunning for, because there's like a dozen of them. Ogre Battle: The March of the Black Queen was the perfect introduction to real-time strategy RPGs for new fans in 1993, and not much has changed since then, but it is a bit slow. But bear that in mind and you'll have a great time. If you like Shin Megami Tensei, Final Fantasy Tactics and Mercenaries, you might get a real kick out of this one. Number 7, Breath of Fire 2. If you've played and enjoyed the PS1 Breath of Fire games that we keep rabbiting on about, you really need to go back and play the first 2 games. Both were released for the Super Nintendo, but it's the 1994 sequel Breath of Fire 2 that stands as the better of the two, as it follows up the animorphing events of the original, but 500 years later. There's simply more polish here in a game that is much more grounded in what it wants to say and do, and how it wants to distinguish itself from the other RPGs of this fantastic era. Breath of Fire 2 has a stunning 16-bit world to explore, with rich pixelated detail to the towns, roads, castles, dungeons, and more of them rascal monsters you'll encounter along your travels. Some of the monster designs in particular are as unique as they are memorable, especially the guy called Chalking. And there's also some excellent spell animations to wrap the whole presentation in a style that helped define JRPGs at this point in history. Chalking's my guy, don't hurt Chalking. I'm chalking here. Breath of Fire 2 is a game loaded with charm and aesthetics, balanced with good gameplay and a pretty ambitious scale. The addictive town building feature will also show you just how versatile this series could be long before Dark Cloud made its way to PS2. Sadly though, Breath of Fire as a series may well have taken its final breath, but the classics like these never truly go out of style. Number 6, Dragon Quest V: Hand of the Heavenly Bride. Covering a span of more than 30 years in the life of our hero, Dragon Quest V was the first in the franchise to be released for the Super Famicom, but it wouldn't get a Western release for quite some time. That was a shame for early 90s SNES fans, as developer Chunsoft took full advantage of Nintendo's 16-bit powerhouse to firmly establish Dragon Quest as an RPG mainstay. This is a large-scale epic adventure that spans decades and boasts a massive cast of characters. The soundtrack alone is one of the best for the system, pulling you further into a world rich with vast landscapes, challenging dungeons, and my wife. She's my wife, please stop marrying her. While the game may dabble a little in kingdoms and gods, Dragon Quest V is ultimately a grandiose coming-of-age adventure with first-person battles, truly evil villains, and even the opportunity to recruit monsters to aid you in your quest for the first time in the series. This is a game with dark personal stakes for our characters, as the story goes in some pretty surprising directions. You need to play Dragon Quest V simply to experience one of the best narratives of its generation, or ever. We might say that quite a lot by the end of this video. Number 5, Secret of Mana. Three young heroes face off against a sinister kingdom trying to occupy and use an ancient flying fortress to take over the world. Kingdoms, heroes, flying things. While the basic summary of Secret of Mana may sound familiar, even at the time of its 1993 release, everything about this action RPG was boldly different from anything Square had attempted before. The creativity runs through everything from the almost overwhelmingly vibrant world in which the game is set, to the item management ring system, and even in terms of allowing you to bring up to 2 other players for the ride in drop-in, drop-out co-op. which is pretty wild for the time and, rarely seen today. But how does it play? Well, the combat is addictive to say the least, especially when it comes to figuring out your party composition and how to best make use of the power bar. Though the fact that you can basically fast travel by getting shot out of a cannon is all you need to hear to know why people love this game. Secret of Mana is the sort of game that almost anyone will enjoy and an absolute high point for the genre, so it's a shame so few people seem to like Visions of Mana, the most recent and most probably final ever Mana game. Should I find time for it? Let me know down below. Number 4, Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. Legend of the Seven Stars is widely regarded as one of the best RPGs of all time, but everything from this point onwards could viably claim to be the best game of all time. The final Mario game for the SNES saw the beloved plumber stepping into a game that was truly unlike anything he had done before, though we all fondly remember fighting Bahamut in the final boss of Mario Paint. From the game combining approachable RPG mechanics with a 3D isometric Mario platformer to character depth beyond simply their high jump records, every aspect of Legend of the Seven Stars was impressively outside of the comfort zone for everyone involved, and it gave the SNES a brilliant last dose of relevance in its final months. Super Mario RPG even creates an all-new threat in Smithy, forcing Bowser to join forces with Mario in a bid to reclaim what is still one of the most unique Mario worlds ever created. Loaded with original characters like Mallow and Geno, the story here is a welcomed dive into something a little meatier for Mario and company. There's also a super charming sense of humour here, which mixes beautifully with graphics that still look pretty damn great almost 30 years later. Super Mario RPG stands with the best of the Super Nintendo and Super Mario in general for building something truly one of a kind upon the foundation which all great RPGs begin. Number 3, Earthbound. Despite strong sales in Japan and a big splashy ad campaign and release for the game in North America, Earthbound languished in relative obscurity with a very dedicated fanbase for a number of years. It wasn't shifting Mario or Zelda numbers, but it was definitely a few rungs above something like, I don't know, Codename Steam? Bless you, Codename Steam. It wasn't until protagonist Ness became an integral part of the Smash Bros. Franchise that Mother 2, as it's known in Japan, started to get some more deserved mainstream attention from both players and the press. Today, this oddball JRPG, set in a town evocative of suburban Americana, is considered one of the best of its genre on any system. At this point, the mythos surrounding Earthbound as one of the ultimate cult classics for the Super Nintendo is such that you might be expecting the greatest video game ever made that will also do your taxes and walk your dog and do your dog's taxes at the same time. Your mileage these days may vary a bit, and the story of a young boy named Ness who must work with his friends to destroy a terrifying cosmic force known as Gigas isn't without frustrations, like a sometimes annoying inventory system, but odds are that you'll see why this game has captured so much attention and affection for so many years. First-person battles with bizarre cultists and angry old drunk men, hallucinations, the Blues Brothers, sort of, a huge world of misfits and eccentric flashes of humour, and one of the most bonkers endings in video game history all contribute to Earthbound being the kind of game that makes you love the medium to begin with. Number 2, Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI routinely makes lists of the best JRPGs and best games of all time. A massive story of magic and destiny set in a blend of steampunk and high fantasy, Final Fantasy VI was a true epic at the time of its release over 30 years ago. That sense of playing a story that can still absolutely shock you today hasn't been lost either. With the legendary villain and madman Kefka at its centre, Final Fantasy VI travels great distances and has you spending time with a variety of characters, including the mysterious Terra, the former General Celeste, Cyan the Loyal Knight, a Moogle called Mog, and quite a few others that could lay claim to being the best Final Fantasy characters ever. 14 permanent characters are available to recruit in Final Fantasy VI, and all of those characters are special or interesting in some way. Shout out to my guy Strago, who I spiritually become more and more like every day. When you combine these beloved names with a deep, compelling story that I won't spoil just in case you've somehow missed that moment for 30 years, and add some of the best 16-bit graphics and sound ever seen to the whole thing, you have a game that was a classic almost from the first stomp in the snow. That prestige has only increased with time, and Final Fantasy VI deserves every single bit of it. But we couldn't quite pull the trigger on placing it number 1 here. Number 1, Chrono Trigger. A one-of-a-kind video game that takes you on a journey across thousands and thousands of years, Chrono Trigger was a late release in the lifespan of the SNES, but proved that the console still had plenty of value to offer as the 32-bit generation began to fully emerge. It's another Super Nintendo game whose acclaim at this point almost feels a bit hyperbolic. Does it live up to the hype though? Is Chrono Trigger the best SNES RPG this system ever saw, to say nothing of its place as one of the best SNES games ever, period, or best RPGs for that matter, or just best games? Can it tax my dog? Yes. Yes it can. To all of those. I mean, I started playing it again just recently on my Steam Deck just to see what it was like, and then, you know, oops, 10 hours had gone. With ample humour in a story that takes surprising dramatic turns at times, and some of the most likeable, most snoo protagonists in the entire genre, Chrono Trigger pulls you in with beautiful 16-bit worlds, a fun time-travelling plot, and a phenomenal soundtrack almost immediately. The combat system offers both real-time and turn-based options, and when you're deep in the ATB system while trying to figure out how tech combinations work, then you begin to realise what all the fuss was about. With a team that included Dragon Quest creator Yuji Horii, Dragon Ball master Akira Toriyama, and Final Fantasy mastermind Hironobu Sakaguchi, Chrono Trigger was all but guaranteed to at least be great. As decades of positive reviews from fans and critics alike might suggest, though, it could just be the greatest. Chrono Trigger is a perfect game to introduce someone to the genre, and just is really a perfect game. Also, Frog. Just take that in. Take it all in, man. Outro, gang. We did it again. Another video down, this one looking at the best SNES RPGs of all time. I was just wondering, what RPGs have you been playing lately? Because I have been. I just can't stop playing this. Shin Megami Tensei 5. It's like, the soundtrack is just, Ryoto Kazuka, you mad, beautiful bastard. Let me know which RPG you've been playing lately, and whichever's the weirdest will get a free Steam key. For free. I've been Jimmy for Cultured Vultures. It's been good to have you, and thank you for watching. I didn't even get the lens. There you go. There you go. Watching.